So thanks for coming today. Received a couple calls from some of you commissioners and wanted to get some clarity on some documents that were submitted. So there were some reservations, I guess you could say, on the vote. So we're going to discuss that. So I'm going to pass it on to Caitlin and Tori. Give us our boundaries.
Sure. So at least it's my understanding that this meeting was called to entertain the possibility of a motion to reconsider an application of the applicant Mary Lively for subdivision variance that was heard at your last meeting. So that is the only thing that is within the scope of today's hearing. We're not discussing the merits of the application. This was not noticed for a public hearing as a public hearing on a planning item. So we just need to make sure that we keep it in the lanes for just whether or not you think it's appropriate to bring this application back for reconsideration. So if that is...
Can we not discuss the merits then? Of
You
why?
can discuss why you think you may want to reconsider if
Okay.
there was a lack of clarity, if there was new evidence. If you can state what reasons you think, on what basis whoever has voiced their opinion that they'd like to have this meeting, you can explain your basis for why you thought that we should have a discussion on whether or not the application should be reheard, but just keep it within that scope.
Okay. Mr. Plumlee.
I was just going to point, because I'd called Tori to ask, since we've not adopted bylaws, how are we going to specifically do it? She indicated it's going to be Robert's rules. So I pulled the specific rule on reconsider and has specific grounds for us to consider reconsideration. The purpose, and it has to be ultimately a motion brought by somebody who was in the prevailing side of the argument. So only one of the people actually voted, in this case, for the application since it was passed, could bring the motion to reconsider. That's part of it. But it has to be either hasty, ill-advised, or erroneous action, or to take into account added information or a changed situation that has developed since the taking of the vote. So those are the grounds in which to discuss. It's somewhat separate than the merits, but it's not, because if it's hasty or ill-advised, you're still talking about the merits in the sense of whether it was hasty or ill-advised. But that's what Robert's rules is pointing to as the grounds to consider reconsideration. And as I said, it's to be brought only by somebody who, in this case, would have voted for it. If the thing had been denied and we were asking to reconsider, it'd be somebody who voted to deny the application would bring the motion for reconsideration, if that's helpful.
Yeah, it was brought up by a prevailing voter, so I guess.
So if we're gonna have discussion on that, it would be my suggestion to have a motion made by who had requested this meeting potentially. Doesn't have to be them, but the motion to be on the table to see if it gets a second or not, and then to open it up for discussion.
Okay, can I entertain a motion if there is any for today's meeting?
I'll make the motion
You'll make a motion to,
to rediscuss the
Reconsider.
Lively application.
Second.
and it's confirmed that he voted
Yes.
Yes.
yes? Okay.
And
You
it
voted
can-
for it as
And
well?
it can be seconded by either side.
Either side, right?
All right, so we have a motion? We go.
And yeah, since we're in here versus chambers, we will do a verbal vote. So Kristen, if you can.
Well,
Oh,
if
sorry,
you want
discussion.
discussion, you can have discussion. If you're ready to vote, that's up to you guys.
Yeah, you,
I'd like to
First
know the
time.
grounds for the motion to reconsider. I think that's what you make the motion, then we consider the grounds that you are laying out for the motion.
Grounds that I would like to discuss are the paperwork that the attorney put forward at the time of the hearing. There was not a copy for everybody, and I didn't have time to read it thoroughly. I don't know if everybody else did, but
Agreed.
that seemed to be the point of confusion, I guess.
I seconded because when the motion was made and then there was a second, we immediately went into the vote without discussion. And that's the main reason why I want to second it.
That is interesting, George. Robert's rules does say the way to, and we haven't done it this way, and it's kind of been the accepted practice of the planning commission to have a discussion and then put a motion on the floor and then vote. Typically, under Robert's rules, I serve on a much larger commission where we actually fight over Robert's rules constantly. There's 44 members of this commission, so one disagreement just leads into this brouhaha. We will not actually entertain discussion generally. There has to be a motion made, it's seconded, to be sitting on the table for us to consider, and then we'll have our discussion. It seems to be a little more orderly in the sense of we know what we're talking about. And so we feel like we made our comments specifically to the motion. And I do have something to add to what John and Michael said about this application that I feel like I need to disclose as a member of the board. So, obviously I've argued vociferously for this particular application. And when I was driving home, I got an email indicating that there was perhaps someone that should have been part of the application that was not, to be considered for purposes of conflicts of interest. And I got to thinking about it. I've actually talked with the applicant a couple of times to try to figure out if this is accurate and inaccurate. They may have something specifically to say about that now. I know they can't because we're not in that type of hearing setting. But so that we avoid, and I don't have a conflict, I checked all that, but so that we don't have conflicts with any of us, and so that council wouldn't have any kind of conflict, I felt as though the application should have that added information put with it. So for that reason, I've been thinking about this since the motion to reconsider was being discussed. I think that is a fair basis so that whatever we send up to council, that anyone that's impacted by the people participating in the application should be on notice of it. I think that's only fair.
So you're going to continue with it then?
Yeah, no, I don't have a conflict.
Okay.
But what I learned was there was somebody that should have been put in the part of this application that had not been. Okay. And so that was new information learned after the vote. It actually, and I called, who's our friend? Kay, like immediately. I'm like, well, what's this situation? So she goes, I think she already knew then. She's like, well, I think you guys are going to reconsider that anyway. So anyway, I just think that's other grounds for me to support this motion. I don't know how that's fixed from a technical standpoint with the planning department to have, any, and it may not be that an additional person has to be put part of it, but I think there's some question there, and that would lead me to want to support the reconsideration.
Let me, so what you said, Mr. Mach and Mr. Plumlee, if I'll ask for a discussion after we get the motion, the second too. If I miss you, it's hard to see everybody from where I'm at. It was really easy on the past city council chambers, but I can't. So I will just stop and ask. We'll go from there. So I'm good to go. Ms. Weiler?
So I abstained, and I will continue to abstain. None of my comments have anything to do with the application of the merits. But I want to address a point that Mr. Plumlee just said. I agree that I'm used to meetings being run by Robert's rules, where there's a motion, then there's a second, then there's discussion. What I think is different about this commission is that we hear an applicant, and we hear those in support of, and we hear those opposing, and we ask questions before there's a motion, before there's a second. And that's why we're discussing beforehand. So I don't know if it's appropriate for us to completely change the way we do business, but I think that's why it's happening.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If I can just add to what she just said real quick. I think we do ask questions, but I think when we resolve the hearing, like he closes the hearing, I think that's a good point to entertain a motion. So then when we have discussion now post-hearing, that we're doing it on a specific motion. And then you can do substitute motions if there needs to be and all those other things. But that's just a suggestion, really.
So Tori, so it sounds like I gotta do 3 discussions. We hear it, I open for discussion when I close, we get a motion,
So this discussion is extremely timely because you're going to get a copy of your draft procedures
Yes.
in your supplement tomorrow. So if you have comments on how, I mean, this is your commission, right? So if you think that based on the format of applicants and questions that it actually makes more sense to have sort of a mini discussion, let's see where everyone's at initially so we can form what we think would be an appropriate motion and then have a full discussion of the motion. If that better suits this board, we can write that into your procedures that way. If you want to default to exactly how Robert's Rules of Order would have the meeting run, we can default to that. You have a little bit of discretion here where you can pick what procedure is going to work best for you. So I would say it's just your discretion on what you
Mr.
think.
Mott?
I think that the discussion during the public hearing is a lot of it's being able to communicate with staff as well as the city attorney, as well as the applicant and people for and against it, to be able to kind of have that conversation with people. And also amongst ourselves. I think once that hearing is closed, then a motion should probably be put forth and then a discussion on that. And then subsequently, if there's substitute motions or the motion continues to go on, then we vote on it. But I mean, I think it's very appropriate to have that as public comments and have interaction with that. And I'd like to see that continue because I think a lot of us gain a lot of information from it, as well as when we get handed new information, it gives us an opportunity to kind of converse back and forth so that we can digest it a little bit. On this application that we're talking about at the moment, we were given a larger packet that I was trying to read through the whole time while the attorney was speaking, and I couldn't do both at the same time, listen and read. And I would have preferred that if we get anything, and this is just for the commission to hear my thoughts on this, if we were to get anything that's substantial, either we take a 5-minute recess or 10-minute, whatever's appropriate, to be able to read over it, so that we can ask the appropriate questions of the applicant or whomever it is that's given it to us, or of staff. Make sure that everything is appropriate within the packet, and as well as they get time to read over it too. And if we feel as though it's a lot of information that we really need to consider further, I think we should defer it until the next meeting or when appropriate.
Mr. Park?
Yeah, going off what Mr. Marsh is saying, I think that is based on what we've been learning in the class. That is the correct protocol, and deferring it would be the right thing because at that point, if we're getting a packet, the public hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. So that could lead to bias or a perception of bias if we're getting information that only we are looking at. So I would agree if it's something substantial like that, it should probably be deferred. We would make that kind of motion then, I guess, at that point, right?
Yeah, again, interrupt me and, get my attention, or if there's a substitute motion, just push on your mic and feel free to interrupt. I don't mind.
And I think too, one thing as we become more familiar with Robert rules, that protects the integrity of this process. And that's what the public is looking to us to ensure. Like, I personally believe that, and that's where everyone feels that they've had a fair hearing when they come to the commission. And so maybe, I know this is something that I've thought about as well, is that none of us want to be the cog in the wheel in the process, but if we have to take a moment to step back and really evaluate all the information fairly, then I feel like we would now have more of an opportunity and comfort level to do so.
Okay. Yes.
Can we abstain if we think that we don't have enough information?
You can always abstain.
Okay. Not because there's a conflict of interest, but because, okay.
You always have the option to
Okay.
abstain.
Do you disclose what?
What's the reason?
Yes.
Just a
So
vague reason?
there are mandatory abstentions and then there's optional abstentions, but you would still need to include whatever information. And if you feel that way, we can walk you through a verbal one that you would give from the dais, or if if in between informal and formal, if you're thinking that you're going to need to abstain, I can draft your letter to be on file
Okay.
for you before the hearing. That's just easier, because
'Cause it's-
when you're up there, you have to give like your business address and all of this information, which is a little cumbersome, so it's nice to have that letter on file.
Okay.
But you always have that option, yes.
Okay.
So as Mr. Parks was saying in this training, they've really come down pretty hard on people turning in things at the last minute. And they say, just defer, it's inappropriate. So maybe while we're doing our rules, our bylaws at this time, we need to speak to that. And I'm just throwing it out there, I'm not taking a position, but perhaps something along the lines, anything that hasn't been submitted 48 hours in advance has to be submitted to the chair and get special approval before handing out, or
We can-
something along
We
those
can have a
lines.
full discussion on the procedures on Wednesday, just because it will be included on the agenda on Wednesday, and it's not included on today's agenda.
Okay.
So since this
Got it.
was posted for the public, although they don't get comment on your procedures, I'd like to steer away from that conversation today.
All right, so right now I have a motion to reconsider by Mr. Cromwell and seconded by Mr. Mosh. Again, is there discussion?
But the motion and the second must be done by the prevailing vote, correct?
Only the motion.
Just the
Only the
motion, not the second.
second. Okay. I want to clarify.
No discussion, so do we go on a verbal vote?
I've got to say something.
Yes, Mr. Cox.
I don't know if I know enough about what's the additional information that we need to have a reconsideration. I was pretty sure of my vote when I voted, and I still am. Unless something drastic happens when we rehear it, I'd vote the same way.
I feel the same way, and if I can add to what John just said, I don't think I would have, based upon what was presented, had decided to vote in favor of reconsideration. But I think it's important, I mean, technically, I don't think I have a conflict of interest, but I've yet to see who puts their names down on the application when it gets amended. So at that point, now I will review it for conflict, and I want to be sure that there's absolutely no conflict. So that's what concerned me more than the fact information came through, or we didn't have a chance maybe to have a little more discussion. Those are important points. They wouldn't change my position on the vote, so I don't think I would see that as grounds for reconsideration. And I do think with reconsideration, we don't want to be in the habit of doing it often, or we'll be coming back here like over like an endless wheel.
Correct.
But it's important to me that if somebody should have been made part of this application, I'm not saying they should have or shouldn't have. I think, but I have information to believe it may have been required. So I should, for that reason, ask for it to be reconsidered with the appropriate people made part of the application, if so.
Any other comments?
I like to comment because I think a lot of us, based on what was the substantial information that was presented at the formal session, a lot of people circled a piece of information that was misunderstood to guide them to make a decision favorably to the applicant. But that information wasn't correct, or people understood it or translated it properly. So I think that's why I think a lot of us have to understand what was presented. And I got lost in the shuffle because I was trying to understand the document. Then I was in favor of the opposition to speak and lost the opportunity for that person. That person didn't even know that you had called that. And then Caitlin said, oh no, we're done. This is for discussion only by. So we got lost in the process because we were trying to review information that was in conflict of what the planning staff had presented to us. And I wanted to say, wait a second, should planning staff speak? Because it was in conflict of what they had presented in the package. So, and I got lost as to what should be the next steps. So I should have abstained because I said, okay, this is going too far, or to defer. But I do think that people reviewed, or the plan commissioners reviewed those additional documents as if it was in favor of the applicant, but we misunderstood what was presented to us. That's why I'm asking for to be reheard.
All right, anybody else? I guess we'll go into the vote. Verbal, correct?
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Byler?
Abstain.
Mr. Croston?
I guess yes. I'll go
Mr.
along with
Cromwell?
you.
Yes.
Mrs. Starrs?
Yes.
Ms. Hippen? Mr. Motch?
Yes.
Mr. Parks?
Yes.
Mr. Plumley?
Yes.
Vice Chair Curie?
Cuellar.
Cuellar, sorry.
Good one. Yes.
And Chairman Alvarez.
Yes. So when will we hear this?
This will go on your August hearing.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Now we're going to, anyone staying for? No?
This is closed.
Okay, gotcha. Close.
Is there additional business on this agenda? You'll get with the applicant though about putting all the information in.
Yes, did you hear from the bar?
Yes.
And did you, okay, I didn't know if you needed anything.
Only the two of us.
from Our office.
Oh, I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
send me a letter.
It's on the way yet.
Well, yes, because I didn't know if you were gonna ask our office or if you were gonna ask the ethics committee.
I did ask the ethics committee.
I didn't think that.
But I was just gonna do double protection.
Here.
Back.
In our packs.
At least they asked for this, there's a document.
That no one gets benefit.
Because technically, it sounds good to their application.
Some sort of verbal.
Did you guys, somebody with y'all played with,
I will,